moving forward to the last session of Democratizing Data. It's an honor for me to introduce you to the greatest journalists that are coming here. They are Delfina Arambillet, data and innovation journalist from NACION in Argentina, and Aurore Malval, journalist and editorial developer at Nice-Matin in France, to tell us how AI and data can help us identify gender representation in our texts and images. Welcome, Delfina and Aurore. We're looking forward to knowing more about AIJO.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen. Okay, thank you. So, hi, everyone. We're thrilled to be presenting the AIJO project, a global experiment of using AI as a tool to approach one of our industry's most pressing challenges, the need for increased diversity. And before starting, we would like to thank the European Journalism Center for this opportunity, and we would like to say that Team AIJO is super happy to be here today. So this project is the result of a challenge at the Journalism AI Collab in 2020. And this collab is a global initiative from the Policy Department at the London School of Economics and Political Science that aims to create opportunities for journalists and different media organizations to come together and explore solutions to improve the future of journalism with AI. So if you want to know more about their work, please visit them at journalismai.info. So next slide, please. Thanks. So as I've mentioned, in the collab, we chose to face a challenge: how we might use AI to understand, identify, and mitigate newsroom biases. Because we believe that biases in newsrooms influences what level of diversity is achieved both in the organization and in its output. So here they are. 10 people from 8 different newsrooms, 6 different countries, and 4 different time zones were part of this, let me say, awesome group. And I cannot fail to mention that we were led by the greatest Agnes Tenbom from Sweden. She's a data and AI specialist at Schibsted Media Group.
Yes, that's right. And doing so, I think with this introduction, we should start by sharing our motivation for engaging this particular challenge. The potential harm of artificial intelligence in media context has recently been subject to many public debates with, for example, racist facial recognition, or some questions around automated journalism, not to mention the risks of cementing current social biases with all the algorithm application, the use of algorithmic applications. So we, as a team in this collab, we wanted to explore what AI could do for us and not to us, with the sharing aim in all our team, which is to better serve diverse audiences. Because we think that the failure to represent and report on different people can feed injustices and biases of our current world. Why did we focus on gender representation? All the team, like Delfina said, is coming from different cultures, different countries, and our newsroom and societies don't struggle with the same kind of bias. What is an issue in Japan is not necessarily an issue in Sweden or in France or in Argentina. But we have shared challenges, and one type of bias that is present in all our society is the gender bias. So that's why we focus on this male and female The problem is we believe that AI can help us identify those biases and to see who is represented in the images we choose for our news stories. So we decided to run a global experiment with the pictures on all our homepages during 1 week. That was in November 2020. And yeah, and now it's Delphi.
Yeah, so I think we should go back to some slides, please. Yeah, here. So you already know the name, but we wanted to tell a very short story about it. First of all, it represents our ambition to pair journalism with AI or AI with journalism, but it also means something bigger. We believe that, or we know that AI alone will never solve our problems. It's only with committed people we can achieve that much needed diversity. So we believe that AI can help us human beings in that work. And also, as an anecdote, AIJO means love in Japanese, as our team members from Nikkei taught us. So next one, please. And the other one, please. Thanks. So now going deeper into the experiment, as Aurore mentioned, we analyzed all the images displayed in the front pages of the news organizations for 1 week of November. It was from the 9th to the 15th, and it was only 7 days. You might say that 7 days is a very short time to do this analysis, but this was a topic of discussion during the collab, but we ended up doing the analysis only for a week because we didn't have so much time to run the experiment. And also we should keep in mind that we wanted to explore how these technologies can be used rather than coming out with statistically perfect results. So next one, please. Thanks. So how do we calculate the ratio in the images? So let me explain this with an example. For example, let's suppose that these 3 images were the ones that we analyzed in the experiment. So in the first one, we calculate per image what is the ratio. So in the first one, we have 50% female ratio because we have 1 man and 1 woman. The second one, 33% female, and then the last one, 100% female. Then we average the ratio to get the 61%, and we conclude that here we have a 61% female ratio. And another thing to mention is that we didn't consider for the final results those images that didn't have any human faces.
So while we run this analysis, we took basically 3 steps. The first step is the face detection. So detecting faces in news images is relatively challenging because not only in news images, not everybody is in front of the camera, so there are sideways, but we also need to be able to detect faces with a face mask, which has become very common in this period of time. So we use a pre-existent face detector model that has been developed by Imperial College of London 2 years ago. And this model can detect almost every faces in a picture, which is the critical part of our experiment. Next step is gender classification. So basically how to detect if it's a man or a woman. That's also kind of challenging because with a face mask, lots of attributes that build a face of a woman and of a man are not visible. So we had also to train a model that already exists that's called the Inside Face, and it's also been developed by the Imperial College of London. The last, and no, not the last, but the the third step is the filtering. So we need to decide who to include in our analysis. So in the little picture you see, there is a man in the green, beyond the green area, but there are also two women in the background. You don't see them clearly, but there are some. And we decided to include faces that are not in the background, not so small faces, because it's not relevant to see, for example, this picture is considered as 100% male and not 66% female, because there are two female in the background. We also decided to eliminate faces that are too small, like in this example, or too blurry. So yes, that was the analysis that with the 3 step. And
then I go now. Oh, sorry. It's your turn.
Okay, yes. I was like, okay, then the human review, but that's comes later. Very direct presentation. So yes, that's our result, the aggregated gender representation. So it's not very surprising that there is a large majority of male faces represented in our in all of our images. So we have more than 28,000 images for this analysis, and 77 were representation of men, and 23 women. Again, this is a global average of all the news media organization, Japan, France, Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, Sweden, Norway, Germany, and Argentina. So it's a global ratio. And then...
Yeah, and now, yeah, the so expected step 4. So our last step, but not least important, of our experiment was a human review. From the beginning, we knew that AI is not perfect, and especially our model, as Aurore mentioned, had some issues with people with face masks and also with elder or child faces. So we sampled 10% of the total images and manually calculated this ratio in order to compare the results from the AI assessment and the results from the human review. So next slide, thanks. So here we have both results. The pink ones are the ones from the human assessment, and the white ones from the AI model. So as you are seeing, we don't have so much difference, but we know that the correct number is somewhere between those ones. So next one, please. And we made our system available, public. So, and it is on a GitHub repository. And if you want to download it and run it in your newsroom, you can enter our website and do it.
We also run a text analysis for English-speaking countries and newsroom. For this, we were lucky to partner with the Discourse Lab at Simon Fraser University to use their NLP tool, which is called the Gender Gap Tracker. And it's also developed with the NGO Informed Opinion in Canada that has been lots of help to run this analysis. So with their tool, media outlets can understand the proportion of men and women mentioned and quoted, and basically quantify potential discrepancies. So from team AIJO, AFP in France, but the papers in English, Nikkei, Deutsche Welle, and Reach were given this opportunity to try the tool for 1 week of their content, which led to around 1,500 articles analyzed. So again, it's not a big surprise that the male sources and mentions are the majority. It's around the same proportion that the image analysis. So on average, women represent 21% of the total people mentioned in the articles, compared to about 73% men. Around 6% of the name mentioned could not be identified as either gender by the AI tool. So that's the unknown category. And as for quoted sources, 22% were women. So we are in the same same level, basically. So we also test the quotes of the person in articles, and according to our findings, the average quote length in characters was 103 for men and 97 for women. The difference here is not is quite subtle, but when we read this together with all our other insights, we believe that this illustrates also a trend. Women are less quoted, and when quoted, the quote is smaller, shorter.
So as you may notice, we learn a lot during the collab and during this process, and we don't want all those learnings to stay with us. So that's why we built an interactive quiz that we wanted to be used, that newsrooms can use it as a resource of inspiration and action. Next slide, please. And of course, as we already mentioned, we built our project in where you can take this quiz, download or access the GitHub repository, or learn a little bit more with us. So if you want to do all these things, please visit us at AIJOproject.com. And thank you so much for your time. Gracias. Oh, and also I was missing that all the illustrations you've been enjoying were made by Aurore. So a big clap to her, because we were delighted with those illustrations.
Amazing work. That is amazing. Really, really beautiful illustrations. And thank you, Delfina. And thank you, Aurore, for showing us and the AIJO project. I mean, it's really needed. We have one question in the live chat that is coming from Sebastian. And Sebastian asks, can this AI be used for other unrepresented groups, like people with disabilities?
Yeah, I can go. We discussed a lot about this at the beginning of the collab, because there are many things that can be analyzed. But as I think Aurore mentioned, we only focused on gender representations because it was a topic reported by all the newsrooms. And we came from very different countries. I mean, we had people from Japan, Argentina, France, Germany, Sweden. So we had different issues. But we shared the gender gap issue. We all had that issue. So that's why we decided and to use the model to analyze that. But also it was like it was most developed in that area. So we had quite short time to develop something from the beginning. So we decided to run an experiment with something that was already started. I don't know, Aurore, if you want to add something.
Yes, I'm not really sure. I think an AI can learn how to recognize some type of disability in a picture. So, but if those disability must been quite visible, so maybe it led to other problems. So how to identify people. The problem is when you think of resolving bias with artificial intelligence, is that you have to quantify everything. So, for example, when we talked about the ethnicity issue, for example. Are there people less represented in media, black, brown people, etc.? So how to adjust the color, the shade, to see, okay, is there's more of a white group representation, or are there diversity in the picture? It's really complicated when you go deep in those questions, because it can also be turned the other way around and create discrimination. So I think those are really tough questions to answer, and that's also why we focused on the gender, because okay, how do you say that? Gender is not always binary, but still, in the representation of a picture, you can draw something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, based on your answer, Aurore, because it was to lead to my next question. If you are thinking of continuing with this project and improve this AIJO to identify race or ethnicity in the newsrooms, but I mean, you mentioned that it's difficult, right? Because it could it can lead to discrimination. So, are you thinking to work more? I mean, in the future, in the near future, in this, or do you have another plans for AIJO?
Maybe I think that for AIJO, I'm not sure that AIJO can focus on other discrimination, because, like I said, with this problem of determining, I don't know, for example, I live in the south of France, and maybe there are people with darker skin but white people with darker skin because of the sun that will be I don't know, quantified as black or brown or mixed people in regard of other picture, for example, in the United States. So I think this it's really tough to strike this discrimination and lack of diversity in an ethnic perspective with AI, or this led to quite yes.
And also doing this, I will repeat something I've already said, but doing this in all our newsrooms, it's very difficult because we have different, we come from very, very different backgrounds, so it will be very hard. We also discussed about doing it with age, like seeing if younger people does not have representation in news media, or old people or whatever, but there's an issue there. We are not sure that the models are working, and also it's very complicated, as Aurore said, calculating the age, the race, or another thing from a photo, from an image.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, go ahead, Aurore.
Yeah, maybe the next step for AIJO, like I see, is maybe to run text analysis in all our languages. I would be very curious to be able to run this analysis in French, and for French outlets. Or maybe to run the image analysis again, because 1 week is a small sample. So maybe we can pick some random period of times in a year, and to see how this evolves, and also to maybe find solution inside our newsroom to kind of explain and work on improving these results. And because that's actually the first question I was asking myself after running the analysis was, okay, why are we so bad? And what could explain that, so that this number of representation is so different between male and female. So So I think it's a whole system that can be questioned and improved.
Yeah, and also, sorry.
Go ahead, Delfina.
And another thing that we discussed is about improving the data set that that is used to predict the gender, because we had, as I said on the presentation, we had some issues with elder or child faces and some races. So we didn't have time to improve it, but we would love to do it in order to make the model more accurate.
Thank you so much, Delfina and Aurore. Unfortunately, we don't have much more time. I mean, I would love to discuss with you about AIJO the whole afternoon, but we need to wrap up today. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing AIJO today with us, and letting us know that AI and data are a good combo to help us to identify gender representation. Diversity, equity, and inclusion must be present in our newsrooms to properly cover the reality that is out there.